Shadows of Dignity. On a crisp autumn morning, Leonard Harper, a 78-year-old man unbent by the years, sat on a weathered bench in Riverside Park, cradling a chipped ceramic mug of tea. The steam curled upward, mingling with the scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. His gray coat hung loose on his wiry frame, and his eyes, sharp despite their age, traced the familiar paths of the quiet neighborhood he'd called home for decades. It was his ritual tea in the park, a moment of peace before the day stirred awake. But that morning, his calm was shattered by the heavy tread of boots and a voice that boomed like thunder. "You're not supposed to be here," barked a uniformed officer, his tone thick with contempt. In that instant, Leonard's steady world tilted, plunging him into a storm of chaos and defiance that would redefine his life. Leonard had never been one for trouble. At 78, he'd seen his share of hardship, decades of labor, the loss of his wife, Alma. 10 years prior, the quiet ache of a life lived on the margins, but he'd carved out this small corner of serenity. The park was his refuge, a place where he could sip his tea and let the world turn softly around him. So when Officer Daniel Voss loomed over him, accusing him of trespassing on public ground, Leonard's heart thudded with shock. "I've been coming here for years," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Ain't doing nothing wrong," Voss sneered, his broad frame casting a shadow over the bench. "New rules. You're out of line." Before Leonard could protest, the officer's hand clamped onto his arm, yanking him up with a force that sent the mug crashing to the ground. The porcelain shattered, tea soaking into the dirt, and with it, Leonard's peace splintered too. The confrontation escalated in a blur. Voss's grip tightened, shoving Leonard against the bench. Pain shot through his shoulder, but it was a humiliation that stung deeper the way the officer's words sliced through his dignity, branding him a nuisance in a place he'd always belonged. "Move, old man, or I'll make you," Voss growled. Leonard stumbled, his breath ragged, as a small crowd gathered, dog walkers, joggers, a few kids on bikes, some staring, others pulling out phones. The moment wasn't just his anymore. It was captured, frozen in shaky footage that would soon spread beyond the park. As Voss dragged him toward the street, Leonard's mind raced. Fear mingled with disbelief, but beneath it, a spark flared danger, raw and unfamiliar, urging him to fight back, to reclaim what was being stolen. Hours later, Leonard lay in a sterile hospital bed, the antiseptic smell sharp in his nose. Bruises bloomed on his arm, and his shoulder throbbed, but the Real wound was invisibly a gnawing ache of injustice. The doctor said he'd be fine, just shaken up, but as he stared at the ceiling, the morning replayed in relentless loops. Voss's sneer, the crowd's murmurs, the cold indifference of authority crushing his quiet life. He clenched his fists, the tremble in his hands now a mix of pain and resolve. "They can take my mourning," he whispered to the empty room, "but they won't take my truth." It was a vow, quiet but fierce, born from a lifetime of enduring and surviving. He'd faced worse poverty, prejudice, loss, but this felt different. This was personal, a deliberate stripping of his humanity, and he wouldn't let it stand. Word of the incident spread like wildfire through Riverside, a working-class neighborhood long accustomed to being overlooked. By evening, Leonard's niece, Marissa, burst into his hospital room, her eyes blazing. At 32, she was a firebranded community organizer with a sharp mind and sharper tongue. "Uncle Leo, I saw the video," she said, clutching her phone. "That cop had no right. We're not letting this go." The footage, shaky but damning, showed Voss's aggression, Leonard's pleas, the unnecessary force. But within hours, a second video surfaced, edited, polished, released by the police department. In it, Leonard was painted as the aggressor, a disruptive old man resisting lawful orders. The lie twisted the knife deeper, turning his pain into a public accusation. Marissa wasted no time. She rallied friends, neighbors, anyone who'd listen, and soon the story wasn't just Leonard's, it was Riverside's. The neighborhood had its own scars: underfunded schools, neglected streets, a police force that treated residents more like threats than citizens. Leonard's clash with Voss became a symbol, a breaking point. In the days that followed, whispers turned to shouts. Protests erupted, small at first, a handful of signs outside the precinct, then swelling into marches that clogged the streets. Leonard, still sore but unbowed, watched from his modest apartment as the community rose. Marissa brought him updates, her voice trembling with urgency. "This isn't just about you anymore, Uncle Leo. It's about all of us. We've got a chance to show the truth." The truth, though, was a slippery thing. The police doubled down, backed by a local news outlet that ran the doctored video on loop. Disorderly conduct, they called it, slapping Leonard with charges that turned his quiet life into a legal nightmare. In court, he sat beside Marissa, his worn hands folded, listening as the prosecution spun their tale. But Marissa had evidence-raw footage from a bystander, unedited, showing Voss's unprovoked attack. She presented it with a fierce calm, her voice cutting through the room. "My uncle's no criminal," she said. "He's a man who's been here for decades, and you've turned him into a target." Leonard spoke too, his voice quaking but clear. "I never raised a hand or a word to hurt anyone. I just wanted my tea and my peace." The judge's face was unreadable, but the courtroom buzzed with tension. For Leonard, it wasn't just about clearing his name, it was about dignity, about proving he still mattered. Outside the courthouse, the fight grew louder. Riverside's people factory workers, single moms, kids who'd grown up dodging trouble found their voice in Leonard's story. Secret meetings unfolded in basements and backyards, lit by flickering bulbs and fueled by shared anger. "We've been quiet too long," one organizer said, slamming a fist on a table. "Leo's one of us, and they can't keep doing this." Plans took shape: rallies, petitions, a push to expose the corruption festering in the precinct. Leonard, though frail, became their reluctant figurehead. At one protest, he stood atop a crate, the crowd hushed around him. "I'm old, but I'm still here," he said, voice breaking with emotion. "They think they can break us, but we're stronger than that." Tears streaked his weathered face, and the crowd roared back, a wave of solidarity that shook the pavement. But the road was jagged. Every step forward met resistance: arrests at protests, smear campaigns in the press, betrayals from supposed allies who buckled under pressure. Leonard felt the weight of it all. Late at night, alone in his sparse apartment, he'd stare out the window, the city lights blurring through his tired eyes. "Is it worth it?" he'd murmur, the question heavy with doubt. His shoulders still ached, his sleep fractured by nightmares of Voss's grip, the crowd's stares. Marissa drifted to her fire, dimmed by exhaustion and threats from those who wanted her silenced. Yet in those quiet hours, Leonard found strength. He'd scribble in a tattered notebook, words spilling out like a lifeline. "Every hurt's a mark I'm still alive," he wrote. "I'm fighting for more than me for the ones who can't." The tide shifted when a hidden camera caught Voss bragging about teaching the old man a lesson to a fellow officer. The clip leaked, raw and unfiltered, and Riverside exploded. Protests swelled, chants echoing through the streets. "Justice for Leo?" The video clashed with the police's narrative, forcing questions they couldn't dodge. Leonard took the stage at a rally, his voice steady despite the tremble in his hands. "I'm no troublemaker," he said, the microphone amplifying his words to thousands. "I'm proof we won't bow to lies." The crowd surged, a collective cry for accountability that rippled beyond Riverside, catching national attention. News vans rolled in, headlines shifted, and the precinct scrambled to save face. Yet victory came at a cost. Leonard's dreams grew darker, replaying the park in distorted fragments, Voss's sneer morphing into a faceless crowd, his own voice swallowed by silence. He'd wake gasping, clutching his chest, the fight etching lines deeper into his face. Marissa stayed close, but their bond strained under the pressure. "We're winning, Uncle Leo," she'd say, her smile forced. "But it don't feel like winning," he'd reply, voice low. Still, he pressed on. In a hushed meeting with young activists, one asked, "How do you keep going when it hurts so much?" Leonard paused, then said, "Every scar's a story. I'm not just fighting for me, I am fighting so no one else has to feel this." The climax came in a packed courtroom, months after that fateful morning. Voss faced charges of assault, falsifying evidence thanks to the leaked video and Marissa's relentless work. Leonard testified, his voice a quiet thunder. "I didn't ask for this," he said, eyes locked on the jury. "But I won't let them bury the truth." The verdict landed like a hammer. Guilty. Cheers erupted outside, but Leonard sat still, the weight of it all sinking in. It wasn't the end lawsuits loomed, the system still loomed larger, but it was a crack in the wall. Riverside changed too. Murals of Leonard sprang up, his face a symbol of defiance. Protests birthed reforms, body cameras. Oversight board small wins born from his pain. In the aftermath, Leonard returned to the park. The The bench was still there, weathered but standing. He sat, a new mug in hand, tea steaming in the cool air. A mural nearby, his likeness, surrounded by raised fists, caught his eye. He didn't feel like a hero, just a man who'd refused to break. "It ain't about revenge," he murmured, sipping his tea. "It's about what's right." His journey from a quiet morning to a voice for the voiceless echoed through Riverside, a reminder that one spark could light a fire. The fight wasn't over, but Leonard Harper, scars and all, stood tall, a testament to resilience, dignity, and the power of a single soul to shift the world.